Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Absolute Green Lantern issue 5 by Al Ewing and Janoy Lindsay. The aftermath of Joe's confrontation with Arbon Sur starts here as Todd finds himself trapped by rubble, unable to move and plagued with visions of the Circle, telling him to be with fear since he is an unknown within the spectrum of light. So I guess this does confirm that Todd will become Obsidian, or at least something related to that after all, as Ewing teases him being something separated from the light, which is usually what Obsidian is. If Todd exists as well, I wonder if Jade does as well, since we haven't seen or heard of anything about her, and her history is a little bit more complicated when it comes to being Alan Scott's daughter, but it would be cool to see the siblings out and about in the Absolute Universe. Soon, Todd is rescued from the rubble by Hector Hammond's people, told to rest and to not talk as Todd has been ranting about Arbon Sur. Hector promptly fires the worker who tells Todd not to talk and to rest, demanding that Todd talk to him about what he saw, otherwise he will not receive medical attention. I'm quite liking this Hector already. He feels a lot less serious than his Prime Universe counterpart can usually be, and it's really playing up the rich guy who throws money at problems until they go away trope. Todd tells Hammond that there was a Green Lantern and it fell on Evergreen, and Joe disappeared and Hal was lucky to be outside since the giant monolith missed him. Sometime before, Hal confronts Arbon Sur in the street, pointing the gun at him as he demands to know where Joe has gone. This is such a jarring sequence since Hal is the one who finds the injured Arbon, usually in the Green Lantern origin, and he gets the lantern ring from him, and here Ewing is twisting that in that he's bringing tension and like violence into it by having Hal there brandishing a gun. As I said, the gun is being used as this symbol of fear, and here he is like pointing it directly at Arbon Sur. Arbon tells Hal that Joe had power without understanding and was an anomaly because of it, meaning that she will be hunted for taking the power. I wonder if this is how they bring in the Manhunters, and the Manhunters will be sent after Joe because she has taken the Green Lantern power without being proven worthy. Before Arbon can say anymore, Hal does the unthinkable and shoots Arbon, unloading the gun's entire mag into the alien, telling him that that was for John. I quite like this moment for so many reasons, since first it's just so strange for Hal Jordan using a gun, but also it's Hal being with fear. He's given in to the fear, and it's caused a big problem here, as he's using a gun to instill that fear in someone else, in this case Arbon Sur. Arbon, however, doesn't die immediately from the gunshots, and he grabs his arm, telling Hal his judgment is the Black Hand. Arbon begins melting and turning into a black sludge that crawls onto Hal's arm and molds the gun to his hand. This is such a cool inverse of Hal getting the ring from Arbon, since instead he's basically cursed with the Black Hand. Also, what I said last issue about Arbon being a title seems to be true, since the alien isn't actually Arbon Sur, it's something else, and the alien says that since judgment has finished and Arbon Sur cannot be appointed, this means that his entire role was to find a successor. So had it transpired like it usually does in the main universe, where he gives Hal the Green Lantern ring, I imagine Hal would then become the Arbon Sur. That is such a fucking cool reimagination of Hal and Arbon's first meeting and how the Lantern Ring is passed on. I like it also, as I said last issue, it adds Arbon to the story a little bit more. Just because he dies doesn't mean he just stops being part of the story. He's always there now with Hal on his hand in the ring as the Black Hand. As Arbon dies, he tells Hal that he must be with fear for the Black Hand and the Black Star. Todd finishes up his story to Hector, who walks away visibly shocked, waving away thoughts from his assistant that Todd needs medical assistance. He's happy though, since he knows that the black goo they found on the ground earlier was the alien Arbon Sur, so they'll definitely be studying that. Hector is all about manipulation in this universe, it seems. Nothing is done without a reason or without him getting something in return from it, and I kinda love that. I kinda like that he's just like a shitheel of a man, and I'm intrigued to see what he becomes as a villain, whether he'll get powers or whether he'll just use his money like he is now. He wants to know more about Hal and Joe Mullen, as elsewhere in the desert, Joe warns Hal to stand down, but he continues to attack her, screaming that he thought that she had died when he shot Arbon Sur, so the Black Hand and everything that has happened to him is her fault. So this is some prime gaslighting there from Hal, although it's not really Hal talking, it's the Black Hand who's now in full control of Hal's body and morphed it into this giant monster. Hal's body continues to transform as he rants and raves at Jo, and she uses her powers to speed right through Hal, blowing a giant portion of his arm and freeing part of his body from the Black Hand. Jo tells him that when the Green Lantern fell, she instinctively flew away, and by the time she realized what was happening, she was lost in the desert, and without knowing which direction Evergreen was in, she didn't know where to go. However, that was until she felt the pull towards Hal, which led her to the diner he was in. Hal knows that she was drawn towards the Black Hand because it was getting stronger and taking control, and he blames her because of it. Hal's anger becomes too great and he becomes fully consumed by the Black Hand, and it kind of turns him into a black version of Arban Sur, which makes me think the body Arban Sur, or the one we saw, was a kind of armor or construct or something, with the Black Hand version of that being this weird Resident Evil monster covering Hal. Hal says that Jo brought the Green Lantern down and destroyed Evergreen and stole Arban Sur's power, making her the anomaly. Jo knows that this isn't Hal talking, as the being talks about the ring she has and how she needs to take it off. This makes Jo remember how she walked out on her wife and how they kept yelling at her to take the ring off, since it's a symbol of commitment. Ewing drops probably my favorite change to the GL lore here, which is the classic Lantern Oath, brightest day in blackest night, which isn't the Lantern Oath at all here. It's the promise Jo and her partner made to each other on their wedding day. This is such an interesting change, and I'm betting that this becomes Jo's Lantern Oath now. Maybe this becomes the Lantern Oath because of Jo. Like she claims that back for herself and it means something more now. Jo refuses to give up her ring, telling Hal to make her as she blasts the man. This still isn't enough to stop Hal, and the Black Hand gives chase as Jo flees through the desert. Hector meanwhile is angered he can't get into the Green Lantern, especially after he paid for it. His assistant tells him that none of the tools they have can get through the Lantern's hull, and Hector soon is alerted to some activity to the southwest. Thinking Lazarus is moving in to claim their prize, he takes a look through some binoculars and finds the Black Hand pursuing Jo. He demands his soldiers pull back since while they can't get into the Lantern, Jo can, and she's coming right for them. Again, Black Hand's design through this entire sequence is just so cool, and I love how it's just getting more and more chaotic. It's just a big Junji Ito horror monster with a horror hand and a giant eyeball thing in the middle of its palm that shoots tentacles out at Jo. It's just a so fucking cool design, especially for Black Hand, who has a pretty classic design. Like he's a pretty boring character when it comes to a design, so I like that they've just completely reimagined what a Black Hand is in this universe. Hector doesn't care if the monster gets Jo or not, only wanting the scanners working to collect any data, but soon he gets some more answers as the Green Lantern activates and rises into the air, sitting upright. A Trendle from the Black Hand grabs Jo by the ankle, but she grabs it back, pulling Hal off the ground, and after sprouting some wings, she flies directly into the Green Lantern. Inside the Black Void, Jo and Hal find John Stewart, now seemingly a Yellow Lantern or a Gold Lantern, and the one who's been talking to them via the visions of the Circle this entire time. Their old friend tells them to be without fear as Jo and Hal pass out. Absolute Green Lantern issue 5 was an absolute ride from cover to cover. I thoroughly enjoyed this issue, and I love how much it explored the Green Lantern lore, especially stuff with like the Oath and how that's been reimagined in this universe to be related to Jo and her marriage. I'm intrigued to see what Ewing is going to do with that and how he's going to have her claim that back for herself as the Green Lantern Oath. I'm also thoroughly impressed with what they've been doing with the Black Hand and just how much cooler they've made this villain who, let's be honest, is kind of a one-trick pony. I'm very intrigued to see what they're going to be doing with the Black Hand going forward now that Hal is fully consumed by it, and what has become of John Stewart. It was a nice tease there at the end, and I'm excited to find out. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10.